Right, folks, welcome to another live and interactive discussion with the positive aging community. We are really excited that you're here today and looking forward to another great discussion. For those that may have never been to one of our discussions before, let me go through some quick housekeeping. First off, these discussions are brought to you free of charge, thanks to the positive aging community and the support we receive from our positive aging community champions. In addition, you can get free copies of the Positive Aging Sourcebook. And the way that you can do that is through our website, proaging.com. Great way to connect with any of the champions and resources. And if you're listening to this and you're looking for a resource and you can't find it on the website and you're looking for it, just shoot me an email and I'll do my best to connect you with the right people and organizations. But at proaging.com, you can also order free copies of Positive Aging Sourcebook there on the right there. And then today's discussion, along with over 350 other discussions that we've had, are all on the left-hand side there where it says on-demand recordings. And we should have this one up along with the chat transcript and any resources we talk about later this afternoon. And then on the right-hand side, we have our upcoming discussions. And we've got a few more this month, and I'll just give you a quick glimpse at what we've got here. Is tomorrow we're going to be talking to the author of How to Live Forever, a guide to writing the final chapter of your life story. That should be a great discussion, thought-provoking on end of life and how we want to be remembered and how we want our loved ones to recognize when the time has passed. And then on Thursday, we got a partnership event with Care Patrol on Parkinson's disease, why exercise is so important. Had a great discussion yesterday on the relation between memory impairment and Parkinson's. If you want to refer back to proaging.com, you can watch that recording. And then our last discussion of the week and the month is going to be learning about life expectancy calculators. I've always been curious about this, and so we'll be chatting with Chris Conway, who is an expert in that area. So, and then we've got a really cool October planned. I should have most of those discussions finalized by the end of the week, so you can start marking your calendars for next month. But we don't want to talk about next month or tomorrow or all that. We want to talk about our discussion today. And today, we are going to be diving into a new and innovative approach to home sharing. And I'm thrilled to have Wing and Kyle with us today, who have launched this new innovative company called Perch houses. And while we're going to dive in and learn as much as we can about their concept and what they've created, I recognize that this discussion could be more of an open-ended conversation on, home sharing, solo aging, what have you. And so one important thing for everybody to realize is that if you haven't attended one of these discussions, the best part about it is they're live and interactive. And so if you've got any questions, feel free to throw those into chat or use that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you would prefer to ask a question verbally, just raise your little virtual hand and I'll open up your camera and mic. And the good thing to know about these discussions is that you don't need to worry about your camera and mic suddenly popping on. The only way that can happen is if you give me permission. So enough of that soapbox there. Kyle and Wing, really charged up to have you here today. I'm a huge advocate of home sharing for a variety of reasons. And I was thrilled to learn about your new concept that is being launched in Northern Virginia, but hopefully will be nationwide before the blink of an eye, right? But let's before we dive into what Perch Houses is, let's get to know the two of you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and what brought you together on this concept.
Sure. Well, thanks, Steve, for hosting, and thanks everyone for coming. We're excited to talk about Perch Houses. You know, you've just mentioned something about going national. I will say our focus for some time, we hope, is on the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Solving the problem locally is not as we all know, not a short-term thing. And so I think we do look to bigger, to growth around the country, but I think we're also set on spending some time here. Our background is Kyle and I both worked at a venture capital firm here in the district and between Baltimore and the district, and we come from a healthcare background. And my background is as an entrepreneur and a digital marketing executive. And about 4 years ago, I became the primary caregiver for my now 84-year-old mother, and I began to really look at the market of how people are aging at home. What are the good parts about that? What are the hard parts about that? And I also began to look at the different options people had in different economic strata. And as I was looking at this, I got together with Kyle, and he and I spent about 8 months researching the market, and we went to market for the first time in late April, early May, and I'll let Kyle introduce himself.
Thanks, Wing, and thanks, Steve, for inviting us to join this forum and for all of your interest and enthusiasm for what we're doing. We do really appreciate that. Thank you also to everybody who joined. We're really looking forward to a back and forth discussion today. Like Wing said, I'm Kyle Sobus. I'm a registered nurse by background, and I've worked in the field of population health for some time. And prior to starting this business with Wing, Wing mentioned his own caregiving experience. I also have had some personal experiences and been positively impacted by different co-living and house sharing experiences, and from a number of different perspectives. And so, you know, we're really excited for Perch Houses, for what we're building, for doing this in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and you know, just really looking forward to the discussion today. So I hope you all find it as
and I know
as we do.
These guys know that I'm really enthusiastic about what they're doing, and so I'm thrilled that it works, and I look to this someday as something that is in every community, because as I'm sure you discovered when you started doing the research, you wouldn't have launched this. As I've discovered is that there is just not enough affordable housing out there. And then the other phenomena that we are that I've really was a blind spot to me is the concept of solo aging, and just how many people are out there that are not necessarily connected to family or loved ones, and it could be that they've got a big family, but they're just not where they're living right now. And so I was thrilled to sort of learn about this approach, because I think it addresses two very important needs. One of the things that you all shared with me was a video, and I'm feeling like let's play this video to kick this off, because I think it's well done and it'll explain the business model that you all have created, and then we can have a conversation from there. So let me go back to sharing my screen, and then I will hit play.
Welcome to Perch Houses. We believe an affordable place to live in a great location surrounded by nice people isn't too much to ask for. That's why we started Perch Houses. We're a new type of home sharing service that provides affordable co-living for women 55 plus in spacious residential houses right in the heart of our vibrant communities. We acquire beautiful homes in desirable neighborhoods and lease individual bedrooms to renters like you. Each house comes with a great kitchen, common area, storage, outdoor landscaping, and cleaning service, all included. The best part is you can get matched with other women like you or organize your own Perch house. The choice is yours. All this for about 25% less than a standard one-bedroom apartment. If you want to live in a great house, lower your monthly rent, have the support of friends, and be a part of a growing community, see what's possible at perchhouses.com.
All right. So that was a little teaser for everybody out there. And the cool thing, well, so why don't you all break it down a little bit for us, kind of what the model is designed to do and how it works.
Yeah, well, a couple of things, up front. One of the questions you always get asked when you start a business is, well, why are you starting it? And there are some very strong signals out there in the marketplace that we need some new living options and housing options and health options. And one of the first is a statistic that really flies under the radar, which is that never more than, this is true everywhere in America, never more than 10% of people over 65 end up in any kind of assisted living facility, nursing facility, CCRC, any of that. So these options that are out there that we think of as being standard places where people go, they are great options. They tend to be more expensive, and they're oddly not for everybody. Like the people that end up there tends to be a fairly small group when you look at the overall population. And the other thing is that the rising rents the last 10, 15 years have been extreme, especially in urban areas like where we all live. And you put those two things together, coupled with a financial crisis, 2008, 2009, which has had a real lingering effect on society. And now we're in a place where the next 10, 20, 30 years for all of us look different, And as we looked at that, we were like, okay, how do you find a way so that people can stay where they want to stay? They don't have to move away. They don't have to move to some different place. They can stay close to their family, close to their friends, as you mentioned. But how can you also live in a great house? And how can you also not be isolated? And that we looked at all three of those vectors to start the conversation. And that's where we came up with this phrase we use it internally, but we call ourselves a healthcare company on a real estate platform, because we think that having an affordable place to live and having a strong, intentional set of community bonds, not just with friends in a house, but also in the community, those are the foundations of health. And that was the real motivation behind us doing this. And so we fit in an area where we hope that people of a certain income level can benefit from this, the forgotten middle, exactly. And that was our motivation for starting it.
Yeah, no, I dropped that in because as you were talking, it was basically, if you're not familiar with the concept of the forgotten middle, it's sort of, if you look at three different segments, you've got people that qualify for subsidies, Medicaid, and things of that nature. And then you've got, whether it be self-identified or identified by your region, the wealthy. But what you've got in the middle is this forgotten middle. And, what's heartbreaking to me, Wing, is, there is a small percentage of people that are moving to traditional senior living, but there's a large group of people that would actually like to move into some of these settings that financially they can't afford it. And the only solution that I can really come up with is something like what you all are doing, is home sharing, whether that be opening your home to your loved ones, your sisters, your neighbors, a stranger. And nobody that I've run across is sort of taking the management approach like you all are, which is very intriguing and gets me pretty charged up. Okay, I knew we were going to already get a bunch of questions, okay, which I think is going to be good in terms of driving this conversation. But somebody is asking, what is the referral process? How do you assess potential residents for healthy cognitive needs, or will you only consider healthy adults?
Yep, great question. So the group that we're focused on primarily is roughly about 55 to roughly about 75. So we're not dealing with advanced health issues in general, although we're all aware that at any moment anything can happen. And so there are two ways we're addressing the question. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, your mic blacked out for a moment.
Sorry. Well, so two ways we're addressing the question. The first is how do we bring people together? How do we match people? And the answer to that is we have, if you on our website, we have what's called a personality quiz. And we actually ask fairly detailed questions to help people to try to take about 80% of the challenge of people living together. So we try to match people who are of like mind so that they have a positive living experience. The second part of your question is trickier and really important, which is, what happens if somebody gets sick? I see the question there, does the contract stipulate when a resident suddenly gets sick? And to be honest with you, we're learning the impact of that. We don't have a set policy. If you get sick, you have to leave. What we try to do is understand how to take care of you, find out what you need, and also understand the dynamics of care in a co-living environment, right? So that's also important as well, because you have to have, if a caregiver has to come live in the house, you have other people living in the house. One of the things we talk a lot about is if it gets to a point where someone's able to care for themselves, or if they're dementia worries or things like that, is taking an active role in the transition to a different environment that's more healthy and more safe for them and with more oversight. And so that's really the way we do it. On the way in, we try to match people. And if there's a reason for people to move out for some kind of health reason, we try to facilitate the transition.
I love it. And Ernestine asks, is this kind of like moving together like the Golden Girls? And yeah, I'd say yes and no, Ernestine. I think people talk about the Golden Girls a lot. I haven't watched the show in a long time, but weren't they all sisters, or they were all I believe they were all related. They weren't.
So it brings up an interesting point, because no, in our houses typically people are not all going to be related. But Wing mentioned, and the video mentioned, that you can either come to us and we will work to match you with people that we think are going to be most compatible with you, that you're going to really enjoy living with and hopefully develop that kind of bond with. Or you can come to us and say, hey, we've got a group of people that have been talking about doing this for a long time, and now we sort of have a way to do this together, and we'll help you find a place.
Yeah.
And then I think there might even be another option. I see Retta has a question. She says, I own a house. I'm female. How can I put my house in the program or qualify for it? And Retta, I would reach out to these folks, but also, there are, with everything, there are, and traditionally, the thing that's intrigued me about what Perch Houses is doing is that there are folks that are out there that are home sharing, and they're just doing it on their own. It's sort of like their friend, their sister, they come together and they figure it all out on their own. And then there are some websites out there. We've featured a couple of them over the years that can maybe facilitate connecting you with somebody. And then there's some nonprofits out there, because county governments are realizing that this is a problem, is people can't afford to live in these expensive counties. And so there are county-run home sharing programs that are designed to create affordable housing without having to build another building. But what intrigues me about Perch Houses is the way that you all are approaching it, where it's sort of a concierge almost, is that if I like this house, if I like the roommates, boom, I can move in, and as somebody had said, I like the housekeeping and the landscaping. I think those are amazing features that you're offering.
Yeah, it's I think that I'm looking at all the questions, and I will answer some of them generally here, and then I want to get into some of the specifics. But there is no one way to do this, is my first answer to everybody. You know, there is multi-generational living. There's sharing your house with another person. There's doing what we're doing, which is co-living. All of these solutions don't even put a dent in the problem, including ours. And so all of the approaches to finding an affordable place to live where people are not lonely and isolated and then have their lives made easier through services and things like that, there are multiple ways to address that. Our approach is to use existing inventory, so houses that are already in the marketplace. And what we've heard from Arlington County and Fairfax County, who we've spent a lot of time with, less time with Loudoun County, but that will come, is that they are very appreciative that we're not doing new building, that we're using existing inventory, that we're integrating people 55 plus or keeping them integrated into the communities, and that we're also offering services to help keep people engaged. And engaged can be anything from, and this is something we want to talk about at the end, is to ask the help of everyone on this call, because we're looking to integrate with services into our business. So you put all those things together. One of the things we're most intrigued by is offering job referrals and keeping people. Look, I'm 63, so I am in this group, and I look forward to working for a long time. And I think that's, you know, the people that we're seeing as our target. We're not retiring. You know, we have a lot more to do. So that keeping people active that way is very, very important. One of the questions that keeps popping up is about men. The answer is yes. We've thought about this a lot. And one of the things when you start a new business is you have to focus. You have to pick a place to start. And we looked at men quite a bit. And as you might have gathered, we are men. so we get this. And what we've realized was that women are much more predisposed to co-living and to building community. Men behave differently. It's not that this wouldn't work for men, but we felt there was a broader value proposition for women that we wanted to prove first. And if we get down the road and it looks like this will work for men, it's very easy to open that up, but we had to start with women.
The other statistic that was kind of startling in that regard was that women are almost, I think it's about twice as likely to live alone at this age than men. Men at this age are still typically partnered or living with somebody else, but about 50% of women age 65 plus are living by themselves.
And I will tell you that we've had some amazing solo aging discussions on this platform, and we even did some little kind of workshop things on solo aging and building your personal village. And, you know, 90% of the people that were there were women. And to the point where there was, I did this one thing, there was a man, he was like, can we talk about the needs of men who are solo aging? Just ironically, this month, I'm going to be giving a talk on that topic because, one thing that I've appreciated in getting to know the two of you is the focus and the fact that, hey, look, you can serve everybody, but if you really focus in and dial this concept in, then it's easy to expand to co-ed houses or male-only houses or what have you. But I love your approach. And I love the approach of starting geographically with Northern Virginia and the DMV. Get this dialed in and then replicate it to other areas.
Yeah. Well, and a key part of that is the homes. And I see there are a couple of questions about how does the home part work, the investing and purchasing and things like that. So one of our keys is that we do not own real estate. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It's expensive to start. And so by doing a leasing and a subletting model or a property management model, we can learn at much greater scale, much quicker, at lower cost. It's not to say that down the road we don't want to own properties, but right now we don't feel the need. But to the point of, and yes, we have investors and we can talk about that, but homes for us are very intriguing. So if anyone out there has a home, ideally with a 4 to 3.5 bathroom ratio, to be specific. 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms don't work as well. But if you have 4 to 3.5 or more bed to bath, we would love to talk to you about your house, because we can generate more income for you. If you lease your house for a certain amount of money, we can probably lease it for more money than you're getting on a regular lease.
And yeah, I think from a real estate and you're handling the management of their property now as well. And anybody who's been a landlord recognizes that that's, sometimes it's depending on your property, but to be able to turn it over and to have, some women 55 plus, you're contributing to the fabric of the neighborhood and and doing something really good for the community.
Yeah.
One other question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kyle.
No, I just noted in the chat, Gail said bedrooms each with a bathroom, and that's exactly right. So each of just to be real specific and concrete about our model here, we would take a 4-bedroom, say 4.5 bathroom home, and then each bedroom would be paired with a bathroom as one co-living unit, with ideally, an extra half bath for guests.
Yeah.
And then each of the 4 folks living in that house would share all of the common areas of the house.
Right. And since that's exactly what we're looking for, and that rarely exists, which is reality of our world today. So one of the interesting things about this is when you get into this concept of co-living, you realize that most of the houses today are not designed for this. And one of the most, if anybody wants to go down an interesting rat hole, the future of home design is fascinating, because there are a couple of key components that are coming together as homes are looking to evolve in the coming 20 years. One is this thing called universal design, which is a home that's designed for all types of access, from regular access to handicapped access to elder access with grab bars, and it's a standardized design process. The other thing is how the homes themselves are designed, with more independent spaces. So the traditional thing of a beautiful primary bedroom with a big bathroom and 3 really tiny rooms for the kids and 1 bathroom that they share, which is many houses today, that's actually evolving quite a bit, because people are living differently. Families are living together. People are living longer. People are living, and this is the space that we're coming into. But in the real world of starting a business, we have to work with what we have. And so to Kyle's point, if there's a house with 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, we would consider adding a bathroom.
Sure.
We would actually do work on the house to get it to the spec that we need. And we help contribute funds to do that. So we help transition properties to make them work better for what we want to do. One of the questions that I also want to answer, which was back a little bit, that Renee asked, but it's a really important one, is about the operating of the house. Like how does the house work after we do this? And I want to make, this is really important point. We are not managing what happens in the house. We take care of the house. We're there to provide services and kind of provide white glove treatment for anything that people need. But these are independent people like all of us living together, and they cook the way they want to cook. They socialize the way they want to socialize.
It's your house.
Your house, exactly. And so the way we create that environment is through something very specific called a community plan. And what we do is when we rent the house, we have a document. It's like 5 pages long. And we sit down with every resident together and we say, okay, here's your template. And we've covered a lot of things here, but this is really up to you to shape and to make it work for you and your house and your sensibilities and your values. And so we'll give you the information to start, but we ask people to read it, create it, and then sign it. And that's like your go forward rules of conduct for the house. And it covers everything that you could think of that's very practical, from people sleeping over to visitors to noise to pretty nuts and bolts stuff. But that our approach here is to, as Kyle said, it's your house, but we're going to give you some help creating rules so that co-living works.
Man, well, and I want to give a plug for if this sort of idea of co-living is of interest to folks. Next month on October 13th, we're going to be talking about a concept called co-housing. And that is very intentional, families and individuals coming together. And I've loved some of the discussions that I've had in the co-housing space, because it's very much in alignment with what you all are talking about. Every neighborhood, every house, every family is different. But if you're helping this new environment with some structure, it makes it a lot easier to negotiate problems and solve problems and things and live together. And I imagine as you open more of these homes, you're going to begin to develop best practices as they've had in this co-housing space as well over the years.
What I'd add to that too, though, is that this community plan is one aspect of our compatibility matching process, right? That essentially starts with the renter's profile and the background check, goes to the compatibility quiz, and sort of ends with these folks living together under the guidance of this community plan. And what I want to make sure is clear is, this is not just saving on rent at the expense of having to live with other people, but rather can really the experience of living with other people can be a huge benefit.
Yeah.
This is key to the whole concept.
Yeah.
So
it's really, well, I say that's such a good point, because it's and Kyle, you've seen this a lot with our Brenner, but it's the ability to feel safe, the ability to have somebody to count on, the ability to not feel alone. They're the practical aspects of it. But then there's also I can go travel, I don't have to manage everything in the house. I've kind of got the freedom to live my life the way I want without all that bother.
Yeah. And we also talk, our properties are lowercase a affordable, right? This is not like capital A affordable. But what we see is an opportunity to provide affordability with high quality.
Yeah.
We are not at all sacrificing on quality or on spaciousness or anything else to facilitate affordability through this sharing model.
I love it. Now, let's see. We've got a few questions. Let's make sure that we jump on these. Someone says, my grandmother lived in a rented house that had been converted into 4 apartments, each with its own kitchen, bath, and living room. The renters were connected, but had their own space. Do any of the Perch houses follow this model? That sounds to me like a dream Perch house, correct?
It is, and we'd love that house if it's out there.
Well, her grandmother was a renter too, so it's
Sure.
It does get, this gets back to what we were saying before, houses are designed for different reasons. And if there were hundreds of houses like the one that was just mentioned, we would all be better off, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're in the reality is, if you look in Fairfax County, Arlington County, Loudoun County, this area that we're in right now, and you literally look at all the houses, very few are like that. So how do we get them to a place where they're more like that, where you've got the ability to come and go, your independent space, a nice shared space? So instead of a tiny kitchen or 1 bedroom, you have a beautiful kitchen and a house and a beautiful living room and maybe a library and a basement and a garage and all the things that you get in a house. But those houses are gold mines, and they're few and far between.
Well, and somebody also in the comments mentioned something around preventing isolation, and one of the things that we've heard from people living in situations like that woman's grandmother are, sometimes that works out really well and people all know each other and they build relationships, and other times you have people living in large apartment complexes that don't know any of their neighbors, right? Everybody has a 1-bedroom, their own sort of private space, but really has no community despite living in close proximity to other people. So one thing that we do value about the houses that we are looking for is that ability to create community and to allow for relationships to develop in a shared space.
Yeah, and I think one important thing that you all have illustrated is that it's not forcing community on these folks. It will develop because of proximity. but with the, what did you call the plan of
The community plan.
the community plan, those people that were living there will figure it out. Okay, let's see. How many Perch houses do you currently have in operation?
We have one house now, and we have 2 more coming online this fall, and then we will probably have between 5 and 10 by June.
Excellent. Let's see, that house that I was talking about, it was in Front Royal, for apartment, a multi-family there. Cheryl asks, do you offer referral sources for people to navigate their relationships ongoing after you've created the community plan with them?
This is a great issue. This is, we call it conflict resolution. And so imagine you're living in a house with 3 other people, and 6 months from now, you start to have a personal issue with somebody, or there's, all the things that can happen with human beings. We do. It is something we've thought a lot about, and getting back to Kyle's point of it being your house, we have that as an outreach service. So if you need something, or if you feel you need to connect with us separate from your group, you can contact us and we can step in. We have actually services to help us do that.
And what I like about this is that we talked about the different ways that somebody could move into home sharing. And when you think about, let's say that I'm a homeowner and I open my house up to a few renters, now you're kind of on your own. You don't
Right.
have the back office. And that's one of the things that I like about what y'all are offering is that you've got a vested interest in making sure that this house is taken care of, it's safe, it's clean, the neighbors are all happy with the situation there, and helping your residents resolve conflicts is one of those things.
Yeah. I see Margie's comment here about $6,000 per month for her mother, and that is a common type of number we hear. And so I don't think we've mentioned, so our rents per person are about, give or take, about $1,200 to about $1,700 a month. It depends on the house, it depends on a variety of things, but in that
the DC metro market.
DC metro market, yeah. Right. On top of that, we have what's called a community fee, which is about $200 a month, and everybody pays that. So what is that? It's your utilities amortized over the house by 4 people, plus landscaping, maid service, TV, Wi-Fi, renter's insurance, a security service. So all those things would actually cost more if you were in a 1-bedroom, you were trying to do them all yourself. And what we do is split those costs. Sometimes it's about $200, it can be a little bit less. And we also make that a little opt-in for the people. So for example, some people don't want to pay for live TV. They just want to stream Netflix. Great, no problem. So by offering a menu of services in this community fee, we lower all the ancillary costs by spreading them out. But our monthly rents are between $1,200 and about $1,700.
Which, because I've got a member of my family that was just going out and renting 1-bedroom apartments in Northern Virginia. That's definitely below the market rate. So that's attractive. Now, with Margie's scenario, it's $6,000 a month for assisted living. And this one thing that you guys are always reiterating is this is not assisted living. This is for folks that can live independently. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, I was just going to say we are not in sort of competition with assisted living communities or even independent living. We're not regulated that way. We're not licensed that way, and we're not looking to. We don't provide that level of care, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a very specialized business, and that's not what we're competing with, frankly. But what we are competing with is sort of the life that you live prior to that, right? And so what we want is to help folks live a very engaged and active and healthy life that prevents or delays the need for an increased level of care.
Yep. All right, man, we got tons of questions. These are great too, but we're going to get to all these folks, and this is recorded. So if for whatever reason you need to jump off, also on the recording, I'll have Kyle and Wing's contact info and all the links that we're referring to. But how do you handle parking since many of the residents will drive?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes down to the houses that we are managing, right? So often in suburban communities or walkable communities, and so there's either plenty of parking or less need to have plenty of parking. But it is something worth paying attention to while we're choosing houses.
Well, the thing that I'm excited about is to see the evolution of this over time, and just
Sure.
imagining, 5 years from now, and where you could see potentially, and again, I know I'm looking in a crystal ball and just dreaming here, but where maybe 3 folks moved into a home and they really got along, and there are healthcare problems that start occurring, and where it's not transitioning it to assisted living, but certainly it's, more supportive services could be brought in so that those people could be cared for. The other thing on the same note that you start thinking about is 3 people that are living together, 3 or 4 people living together, and maybe 1 or 2 don't like driving or don't want to drive anymore. And then the other residents are really willing and able to drive, where there can be shared resources there as well.
It's funny, people who come to look at our house for open houses. So as some of you know, we have open houses, and like every open house, people come to the open house. It is amazing how many people come as groups.
Mm-hmm.
1 person driving, 2 or 3 people in the car. It's very noticeable difference.
Yep. Okay. Now, geographically, Margie was asking, are there perch houses in Massachusetts? And I think I saw somebody talking about New York. Right now, primarily Northern Virginia and the DC metro market, but potentially you can see where this is a model that could be replicated and come to communities all over the country. And what I'd recommend, though, is, Margie, if you're interested in this concept in Massachusetts, email Wing and Kyle, get on their list, because they're sort of pioneering this and learning how this is can be implemented, and might be able to help in your community when the time is right.
I'll add something to that real quick too, just to say, Northern Virginia was very attractive to us for a number of reasons, including from a regulatory perspective. They are in Fairfax and Arlington are very forward looking and progressive in terms of helping this forgotten middle group. And so they're encouraging these types of co-living models and house sharing models. In some places around the country, what we're doing would just not be allowed.
Where they're banning, like there's some neighborhoods that will not allow Airbnb and things of that nature, where
Sure, and depending on how those regulations get written, sometimes they're essentially a broad enough brush to prohibit our co-living model.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to say, specifically, so the issue with Airbnb, for everyone's background, is what they call short-term rentals, right? So what happens in a market is when Airbnb takes over a market, the rents go up. So if you have a property, you make more money doing short-term rentals than month-to-month rentals. And that's why you see places like New York and others starting to pass legislation to keep Airbnb out of the market, because what's happening is our target is being priced out of the market and can't find rentals. This is happening in Austin, Texas, and New York and other places. And the thing that really drives these markets is the zoning laws. And so there are antiquated zoning laws that have a number of unrelated people able to live in a house, and they go way back. And to Kyle's point, Virginia is much more progressive. But we're very interested in other markets, this is a tricky thing, because for a business, obviously you want to expand. But the whole reason we're doing this call with everybody, and the reason we have enjoyed getting to know this community, is that this is all about community, right? This isn't just a startup business that sells widgets. And what we're really intrigued by is over the next couple of years is building this out in Northern Virginia to really understand all the dynamics that make this work. And so to go to another market for a business like ours is more considered than it might be for others, because there's so many ancillary services and people and community groups and government support systems that make this work. And so,
and it's all about where people live. I mean, it's an incredibly important decision, and it's worth us taking time to get it right.
yeah. Somebody asked about the real estate. This is an excellent question, Janet, about what happens if we don't own the real estate and somebody says they want to sell the property. That is the flip side of not owning the real estate. But the way we get around that is by being very transparent with our landlords. And so we look for longer term leases or longer term property management relationships. And when I say longer term, I'm talking 3 to 5+ years. And that's really important to us because we want our partners on the landlord side to be into this with us for a long-term relationship. We're not looking to flip houses. We're not looking to rent for a year. We have a whole different concept of what living in place is about. And that's what this is. Mm-hmm. And so we've gotten a lot of inquiries from people who are like, I want to come for 6 months or a year, but we've also heard from a lot of people, I want to spend 3 to 5 years. I don't want to move again,
Right. And then you all are being transparent to your residents in letting them know, hey, this home here, we've got a 5 to 6 year agreement, that if there is a change, that gives those folks time. And more than likely, if they enjoy that, you're going to be able to help transition them to another Perch house,
Yeah. And I as we grow and as we, I would just say, to give you an example, the situation around the rent for our first house will be very different from the second and third house because we're in the marketplace, we have a reputation, and now landlords are willing to take a different view of working with us over time. Like any startup business, you have to build your reputation. But I think our value proposition to property owners is long-term income. And
Catherine asks, what is the formula for charging the rent? How do you come up with that?
Yep. So if you look, the formula for charging the rent is what makes sense from a value standpoint, the way Kyle was describing it earlier, of a bedroom, a bathroom, access to the common space. And when you add 4 people's rent up, can it be slightly more than the average rent they would get for the whole house? And so it's not to double it or anything crazy like that, but to stay in business, we have to charge our renters in the aggregate slightly more than the rent of the house. But what that does is let someone live in a house for $1,200 to $1,500. And that's the unique thing about our model.
The other part of that formula is just the local context of that market, right? So we've aimed for essentially rental prices in the neighborhood of 25% less than a 1-bedroom apartment in that neighborhood.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah.
And to answer, Wendell's question, no, the homeowner is not required to live in the house. In fact, we don't have that dynamic right now. These are people who come in as a group.
We also think that that's part of the advantage is, everybody living in a Perch house is on essentially equal footing, right? Yeah. There is no one person who owns the house and sort of runs it for everybody else, and it's their house and you're living in it. It's your house.
And I think the other home sharing models that we talked about, there's nothing the matter with opening your house where you're living to home sharing, but it's great. That extra pressure of, hey, why is the ice maker not work? This, that, and the other. There's now this third party that handles that. And your model is in the best interest to resolve those issues and continue this wonderful environment for the residents. Sandra says, do you list nearby amenities with these home shares? Do you also list nearby neighbors as well? Like in the neighborhoods that you're currently in, have you reached out and connected with the neighbors and the various amenities there for the residents?
Yes, to the first part about amenities, we actually, one of our selling points is the location of the house. And so the location of the house includes access to trails and walking, access to community centers, access to shopping, all the things that even your walk score. We don't do the neighbor thing. And we don't, this gets back to kind of independent living, if you moved into a house, your realtor wouldn't survey all the neighbors and introduce them to you, and it's the same dynamic. We kind of leave that up to people to integrate into their local community, the neighborhood themselves.
Okay, Ernestine, I knew this question would come up multiple times, but it's good to answer it as many different ways as possible. How do you address conflict in the home, and just kind of repeat the agreement thing a little bit?
Well, Kyle, you want to answer?
So yeah, I'll take the first answer, and then you add to it, Wing. But everybody coming to Perch houses goes through essentially a process, right? It includes building a renter's profile, going through a background check, completing a compatibility quiz, and then upon living in the housemates together create a community plan that sets essentially guidelines for living in the house together, and making sure that it's a positive experience, that it's a net positive experience. When conflict arises, and it always does among any people in any relationship, I mean, the first answer here is these are all adults who are choosing to live together, and people are really good at conflict resolution themselves. So that's the first part of any sort of active conflict is that folks can certainly handle this themselves. But we're also available to help guide any conversation or conflict resolution needs that come up. And the last thing I'll say is just sort of jumping back to the community plan and the lease. There are a lot of situations, common situations, things that we get questions about, like what if X person is having Y person over 5 nights a week, and it's been going on for months, and they're basically living together now, right? And so like things like that are dealt with in the lease and in the community plan, and have specific guidance associated with them.
Yeah, this model is not new, because I basically lived from age 18 to I think like 27 in a self-managed environment like this.
Yeah.
And the irony is I couldn't afford to get a place on my own, and I wanted companionship too. But as a young adult, we figured out how to manage all the things that we're probably dreaming about that could happen in your homes. And we figured out a way to make it work. And a lot of times when you make it work, it brings you together closer. And some of those folks that I lived with are some of my best friends that I've ever had. Let's see. What is the management fee for you to manage? Usually a % of rent is used for like a landlord management fee.
There's 2 models. One is we can lease the house, literally rent the house, and then we can sublet the rooms. The other model is the model you're speaking of, Steve, which is the property management model. And so we take 10% of the monthly rent in the property management model, and we take 10% of the monthly rent because we generate more rent. And so if you're a landlord, the value proposition for us is, and I see some of the other questions, longer term leases, 2+ year leases for residents, which is much more stable for the landlord, but also it's just more aggregate rent over time.
I love it. Susan, if this is the Susan Walker that I haven't talked to in many years, I'm glad to hear you here. After a while, when somebody needs assisted level of care but doesn't want to move, do you have a policy or a way for them to move along, or can somebody bring in home care and therapy into the home? And again, I'm going to, on this, before you answer this question, I'm going to go back to when I lived with a bunch of guys in a home. We were regularly getting banged up, playing sports and things of that nature. And this actually happened to one of my roommates where he needed rehab and everything in the home. So it's not, we don't want to sort of stereotype that just because these are homes for people, women 55 plus, that inevitably home care might play a role. It can happen to any of us at any age.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is that this is a bridge that we sort of see and are planning for, but one that we haven't yet literally crossed, right? In our experience. But so a couple of things come into play. One is because this is a house sharing, a house sharing model, there are just realities to deal with around everybody that's living in that house and whether or not essentially like having a live-in caregiver would sort of fit in this model of living, and would it be under that sort of umbrella of reasonable accommodation? And so this is a very serious question, and one that we've dealt seriously with our own legal counsel, but it will in reality have a lot to do with the relationships of the folks living in that house and what they all want together. And also the reality of that house and whether or not having 24/7 caregiving, if that's the situation and the need, is feasible in that environment. And so this is a conversation that we're preparing to have when it comes up and when it's needed, to make sure not just can somebody do this, but really is it the best thing for them?
Okay, folks, it's 5 minutes to the top of the hour. I know some of you will want to jump off because you've budgeted an hour. Kyle and Wing, can we keep on going? Because I'd love to get through this pile of questions. And just remind everybody, this is recorded, so you can jump back in and just go to proaging.com later this afternoon. But these are great questions you all are asking, and I love it because I really see where this is the future of living for us. Another choice for us that could potentially make lives better for all of us, regardless of our income and ability, but especially for that forgotten middle and folks that may not be able to sort of live on the market rate that's in their location. Janet asks, what about furnishing, especially the common areas? Since you don't own the real estate, what happens to the resident if the owner wishes to sell the property? Do you really have a long-term lease with the owner? Well, I think we've addressed the second two parts of that, but I am curious about the furnishings and that question.
Before we do that, Steve, you mentioned something about the market rates in any neighborhood and whether or not they're affordable. And one of the really interesting things that we've heard from interested customers is essentially their context, right? This is not only attractive to people who are sort of actively getting priced out of their neighborhood, but what we've heard also from folks who are living in active adult rental communities, these like 55 plus apartment communities, what have you, where the rents are actually above market rate. So we've heard from folks that are living in 1-bedroom apartments for $2,800 a month, and it's not an affordability issue for them, but rather like they look at this and they can see an opportunity to have the same quality of life and the same community and the same activities, and they just don't need to pay as much. And
it's about, the thing I love about this is it's another choice on the menu,
right?
And we need more choices, folks.
Exactly.
So back to the furnishings.
Furnishing is a important thing. So we have set aside in our business model a certain amount of money for each house, meaning improvements on the house. And that improvement can be anything from building steps, building a bathroom. It can also be furnishing the house. And so the model we're using right now is we furnish the common areas with furniture, and we then leave the bedrooms up to the renter to bring their own stuff. And then we have all storage options as well if people have other things they need to store. All of that is a little bit flexible. If we had people who wanted to move into a house and they said, we've got all the furniture, we wouldn't do it. We would do the repairs that are necessary for that group. But right now with the model is, well, we were happy to furnish the common areas. We put plates in the kitchen, we do things like that. We put cleaning supplies in, but we also leave it up to the renter. And I think as we learn over time, the right model will evolve.
Yeah, but I think initially for your current homes that you have that are coming onto the marketplace, I like that idea that the common areas are furnished. And it may mean that if people have some furniture that's valuable to them, they may seek out storage, and that may be one of the partnerships that you all develop in the neighborhoods where you're located. Let's see. We talked about expanding this, but somebody asked, are you considering sharing your model or sharing your management model for a fee? Not sure if franchise is the right term. I think you've said a few times, get this dialed in Northern Virginia, and then, who knows where it could go from there.
Yeah, there's no question. There are lots of paths a business like this can go down. And one of them, it's interesting too, there's a comment about, have you thought about married couples? And I think all of these are totally realistic options. We had to start with kind of one focus, but if we had two married couples who said we'd like to share a big house, the idea is to have an affordable place to live with great community and services. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ways to make that work, and so I think we see our model as a template that we can grow in many different directions.
And the size of the real estate that you acquire could warrant something like that. I bumped into a neighbor who actually had both sets of grandparents living in very large in a very large house, and they never saw each other. It was that big of a house, So okay, let's see. You talked a little bit about this, but Laura was wondering, have you encountered any zoning issues, or have you had to apply for special zoning?
No, and to Kyle's earlier point, we so one of the things you get asked about if you're Kyle and I from investors is, how do you enter a new market? Because investors, of course, are very curious how you're going to expand. And entering a new market to us really comes down to what Kyle was talking about, the zoning laws and the ability of that county. It's a very county by county business, the county to be receptive to what we're doing. And there are plenty of counties out there right now in the right places in America where this model will work. There are others that are more challenging, for example, Maryland, right across the river. And so the difference between the Maryland zoning laws and the Virginia zoning laws is a lot. And that's why we're in Virginia, to be honest, because it's easier to start. That doesn't mean you can't go to to Maryland and, lobby and get the ability to launch there after you get some, people to agree, waivers. Pardon me, long week. But once you get waivers, that process takes a while. So this is a model I think that will catch on, as the economic realities start to become more clear, as the population starts to grow. And as people get priced out of the market more and more, this is a logical way for it to go. And it really makes those zoning laws that were created for, I hate to say it, Steve, young people like you living together in group houses, like we all did, it makes those just archaic.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Patricia says, do you work with specific real estate agencies to find the houses, or do you search out the properties yourself?
Mm-hmm.
We get a lot of Zillow alerts. I'll say that.
We would like to work with realtors. We would like to be much more plugged into the realtor community, but right now we're being pretty scrappy.
Okay, I love it. And somebody mentioned that Airbnb definitely increased prices in Naples, Florida. And they said that there's a huge need down there for something like this. Somebody asked about the average length of a lease for residents. I guess you've got your first property. What are
Yeah, I was
the
thinking,
lease lengths?
a typical lease length is going to be 12 months for us, and then, renewals ongoing from there. And
On the
we've heard,
renter side.
Yeah.
right. And we've heard from folks, I think Wing mentioned earlier, they want to live 3 to 5 years in the same place. They don't want to keep moving around. So we look for this to be a place where people can live together and build those relationships and do not have a lot of churn and transitions.
And Shonda is recommending these senior real estate specialists and the realtors that specialize in realtors. Those could with older adults could be a double whammy in terms of helping you find properties, but also giving their clients an alternative to the traditional options if that's not something that's attracted to them. Shauna also is asking, how do you provide storage for everyone? And I guess that's going to be specific on the home. Like if there's a home that has a big unfinished basement, it's got a built-in storage unit.
This is a key thing. And I'm going to be really honest. There's two parts of this, and they're both very important. And one is the emotional part, downsizing, the concept of downsizing and the stigma with downsizing, which is something we really spend a lot of time thinking about, and it's frankly a big issue for how we all think about this phase of our life and how we look at something like this, right? And it's no surprise that it's possible to think of moving into a house shared with other people as less attractive option than living in a nice house. But to Kyle's earlier point, it can actually be fantastic because you have a different kind of experience, but our culture isn't set up that way. So the downsizing or the emotional aspects of downsizing are one piece of the storage question, believe it or not. The other piece of the storage question is practical, to your point. And so there's space in houses for storage, but there's also space outside the house. And one of the things that we do is help you find space outside the house if you need to store things. And there are a lot of ways to do that. We haven't really talked about this, but when we have someone move into our house, we have a bit of a transition bonus. So we can give them a certain amount of money to help with storage, with moving expenses, with things like that. It's kind of an incentive to help them move. And the storage is part of that.
I love it. And I'm going to drop in a link to all of our discussions on what to do with your stuff. They've been fascinating, but I'll get that in there. Tom asks, what is the pet policy?
This is a big one. Well, I'll give you the simple answer, and then there's the more complicated reality answer, which is, the simple answer is if you have an emotional support animal or a service animal, those are not covered under the pet policy by law for dwellings. The more emotional answer is a lot of people love pets, and especially people our age. And what we want to get to is a place where we have complete control over our environment so that we can allow pets, or we can have a pet-free house. It really depends on the people in the house. Right now, what we do is work that out in advance with our landlord so that we have that flexibility. But I think going forward, having the pet option is really important over and above service animals and emotional support animals.
Okay, great. And my mom, who is a landlord, discovered that things have changed a lot with the emotional support animals, that in her ads, she can no longer advertise pets. And the language that she uses when she talks to somebody is a lot different than when she was renting her house 10 years ago. Let's see. Somebody asked, and we've addressed this in a couple of different ways, but I like bringing these things up as many times as possible, is the scenario if somebody needs to break a lease, what happens under your contractual agreements?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Well, I mean, the truth is that this is another one of those questions that is just so case by case basis, right? Like somebody could need to break a lease for reasons of changing of health status or the like, and that's going to be very different than, I just decided that I'm going to move to another state and I still have 9 months left on my lease. So yes, of course, like these are things that are dealt with in our literal lease itself. But we're also human about this and are looking to help people live their best lives. And so I think it's just important to recognize, like, breaking a lease is there are a lot of situations in which that may occur, and not all of them are going to have the same sort of results.
Great, great. Okay, now I'm glancing through. Man, this was a robust. Folks, all those questions were coming from Q&A, and now I'm looking at chat, and there are so many great questions. I know that Wing and Kyle have been addressing some of these in the discussion. The gosh, yeah, Joy, her question about what in the contract stipulates when a resident suddenly gets sick. You know, we would have never thought of that question unless we had gone through the pandemic. But have you addressed, or would that be amongst the residents a talking point as to, if you get the flu or COVID, here's how we're going to communicate with each other?
We're dealing with this right now, as many people are, because sadly COVID's having a bit of a resurgence. I think that there's a couple of ways to think about this. One is, and you know, I'll be honest, I'm not going to say to everybody we have this completely figured out. But there are two ways you can address something like this. And oddly, it's not unlike the way the pandemic transpired. One is the company, whether it's the government or in this case, Perch, setting rules. And the other one is to leave it up to the individual people. And I think we're kind of in the middle of trying to offer some structure, but also leaving it up to the individual renters how they want to manage the house.
And this is a great topic to be covered in the community plan.
And also, I got to tell you, I think this is a great topic to talk about in another one of your episodes, because I think that health issues, living together in community, what are the, you know, where do we want the rules to come from, right? And that's a big issue. But I think in our case, and, you know, like everything in life, it's not black and white. The example you raised was the flu. The flu is serious, to be sure, especially for this age group. But what if someone gets some other disease, or what if someone gets really badly injured and they can't, like, there are all these degrees of impact, quote unquote, on the health. And I think, you know, Kyle said it well earlier, it's really a case by case basis. And part of what we feel comfortable about is that as individual caregivers in our lives and as people, and as part of our service in this business is to help our customers, right? So if one of them gets sick, part of what our job is to help you figure out the right plan. And that is actually our job description. So, you know, we never know what life's going to bring, but I think half the battle is having people in place to help you navigate that situation. And that's what we do. And so I think that's where we feel, and given the fact that we come from the healthcare industry, we've got some ability to manage that on a case-by-case basis.
Leslie just dropped in the chat, the more case-by-case decisions you take, the better you're doing as human beings. And that's very kind of you. I thank you for that. I was actually going to raise the flip side of that, which is to say that, you know, by one of the things that we do by policy that is health related is that all of our properties are no smoking properties, right? So there are times where a policy can be instated and sort of clean across the board. But yes, we do agree that most of these will be handled on a case-by-case basis.
Yep.
Okay, I like this one. I'm scanning through the chats, and we've addressed most of the topics in one way or another. But Elizabeth says, how did you come up with the name Perch Houses? What's the significance of Perch?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, go for it.
We had a name for our company that really wasn't very creative. And I'm not going to tell you what it was, but it was just boring. And so a person that was working with us, who's part of a wonderful woman, who helped us launch our company, just decided to name it Perch Houses one day, and we said okay. And perch is the perch of your house, perching on your doorstep, perching in a happy place, your place where you can perch for your life and feel good. And I think that's we love the name Perch, but what we really love is the other thing she came up with, which is the open door. And if you look at our logo, there's an open door, and that's really a metaphor for how we feel, is that we want to have an open door for people to give them a new alternative. And all credit to our friend Ann Lee, who came up with that idea.
Well, Beth has a nice comment here. She thought it was because his name is Wing, and he thought about perching. But out of curiosity, is Wing your given name?
It's my nickname. Kyle just reminded me, by the way.
No.
No, sorry, you're done. Kyle just reminded me that actually he came up with the open door. So I give all credit to Kyle.
Thanks.
Was most things. So Kyle and Ann, I had absolutely nothing to do with it, which is the key takeaway from this point. My name Wing is just a nickname. My parents were creative, and so it's just a nickname.
I love it. Okay. By looking at this, I think we got through everything. I love it. And that I can always tell when we've got an engaged hot topic is because we go over an hour, and did an hour and 16 on this. And so one of the things that I'd love to do with y'all is do some brainstorming on how maybe we can carry this conversation. I could see like a community developing where the topic is just home sharing in general, where, hey, yes, Perch Houses is an alternative, but there's so many good questions in here in terms of how to share a home and live with other people and find communities and things of that nature. I think that this is definitely could warrant further discussions. But also, I'm really eager to do some check-ins with y'all as more homes develop and learning about the best practices and the challenges that you all are faced in building this.
Yep.
Absolutely. And we look forward to that. And I think one place to also sort of continue this discussion, we are somewhat active on Instagram under Perch Houses. And so I definitely encourage you to come, find our page, follow us there, and
Facebook.
And just communicate with us there.
And I will make sure all those links are on the recordings as well.
One last thing, and I don't know if anyone's still on, but if they are, we are very intrigued by potential partnerships and services, building off what you just said, Steve, that we can offer our renters. And so we'd love to talk to anybody who has a service aimed at this community that we potentially could partner with.
I love it. All right, guys. So in closing, thanks so much, Perch. My wheels are spinning, thinking of the clients who might want to consider this concept. One is a mobility handicap, but I think I could work with her too. So I'm always excited when our conversations inspire people to get the wheels turning. I mean, that's really what I'm trying to do here, folks. So thanks, Wing and Kyle, and thanks to those of you left in the audience for all these great questions. I'll get this up ASAP and spread the news, because I really think that this could be a great solution for a lot of people.
Thanks, everybody.
You bet.
Steve, thanks again. Thanks for hosting us. Really